Hi, it's Tootie Tagerly, live Tuesdays from San Francisco, close to noon. And we're talking about transitions and liminal spaces today. And some of this is inspired. I don't think I even knew what the term liminal space was. And until I got this deck of, I don't know if it's it's not a tarot card deck, but a deck of cards called Postcards from the Liminal Space, kind of reminding us of the awe and magic and specialness of being in a liminal space. A liminal space is a space in between. For me, a liminal space growing up was always being in an airplane because you were up in this, tube, this metal tube hurtling into the air, often like doing magical stuff. Like when you travel to Asia, you lose a day. When you come back, you gain a day. There is some magic going on here. And I think a lot of it for me is realizing and recognizing that this magic happens in the liminal space, even though it can fucking hurt like hell. And part of it is recognizing that change, uncertainty, transitions are fucking hard. Any of us who's ever started a new job and tried to figure out what that first 30, 60, 90 days is knows, that it's exhausting because it's new. Transitions are harder if it's your first time. Brene Brown talks about FFTs, fucking first times. That first time is going to be really hard because it's new to you and you've never done that before. So part of it isn't beating yourself up. It isn't saying, what's wrong with me? Why am I so crazy? Why am I finding this so hard? Because transitions are really, really hard. And it is for everyone. It might be harder for some people than others, but it's really, really hard. I'm a person who loves change and embraces change and hurdles towards it nonstop, full tilt, run through it. And everything's still hard. So that's the first, acknowledging that transitions are hard. The second thing is continuing to practice really gratitude, continuing to acknowledge and wonder and celebrate what's going well through this. And the path for that for many people that I work with, many of the clients, many of the super high performers that I work with, is it helps to remind yourself of the learning. I think especially in Silicon Valley with this culture of personal growth and change and continuous learning and running experiments and learning and iterating from them, it's okay to know that this is simply part of the experience. This is part of the process. You can trust the process. And no matter what the outcome is at the end of the transition, whether it's the one you wanted, your company goes big and makes it and gets acquired or gets a round of funding, or another outcome where you can't do it anymore. You've got to stop working on it and go back and get a job with a steady paycheck for a while. Those are outcomes. In the middle, especially if you're in a transition period where you're trying to decide if it's time to shut it down or if it's time to, find a buyer, it's all okay. Just remind yourself of the learnings through it. Related to that is we're all humans. We can feel grief, we can feel pain, we can feel anger and resentment and rage, frustration, kind of a sense of like injustice and unfairness. Why is this working out? We can feel unlucky. We can be pissed off at the fact that we're living through our first global pandemic. That still isn't over. There's Delta. What are the next variants after it? And what's important is to realize that, hey, it's about knowing that transitions are hard and we're reminding ourselves of the learnings, and right here, right now, present, there is an emotion. And to help with it, it's naming, acknowledging, hearing, feeling that emotion and knowing that that's okay. And what helps is to speak it out loud or to share it with someone else, because it gets just a little bit less lonely, just a little bit less isolating. And then the last thing to help with transitions, and after that, I'm gonna actually pull a message from the postcards. But the last thing that I wanted to talk about, something that I've been obsessed about lately, is this concept of force and flow. And it's also, one of the last closing chapters of my book where I share the SURF methodology, SURF, how to get through a lot of these transitions and learnings and leadership. That'll be in the book. But the F is force and flow. Because wherever you're going in the transition, know what patterns you're doing. Know if you normally are paralyzed and scared and don't know what to do, just know that that's your pattern. And in that case, maybe there needs to be a little more structure and force to be like, all right, how do I get out of this? What's my next step? What's the next smallest step that I can take in this transition? And it might just be getting out of bed and making breakfast. Or it might be calling a person, committing to do one thing in this difficult period. And the opposite of that, or not the opposite of that, there's force and there's flow. The other part of it is flow. Maybe if you've been pushing too hard, hammering too hard, maybe it's time to ask yourself and the people around you, well, what if this were different? How might we get in a stage of effortless flow and energy? What if this were easy? And that might open up different things. I don't think there's a right answer for, is it force? Is it flow? I don't think it's force versus flow either. I think it's a continuous spectrum that we're all on. And knowing our patterns, knowing where you normally default to, and being able to pick and choose to do something a little bit different. I think that makes a difference. All right, so in this liminal space, talked about transitions are hard. Remind yourself of the learning and the celebration, sharing the emotions, and then finally, which is it that you picked today, force versus flow? And then the card. This is definitely a force card, which is when you're in the liminal space, sometimes you gotta snip. What's the thing that you want to cut? What's the thing you're willing to let go with? What is it that is the right thing to snip today? Chat next week. Bye.